Hey there, and welcome to a deep dive into all things Elon Musk. We're going way beyond, those Tesla tweets and those SpaceX launches, really trying to figure out, I think, what makes this guy tick, as a person. One of the most interesting figures, I think, of our time and our guide for this journey is Walter Isaacson's new biography. Really revealing stuff.
Yeah, it's not just your typical, rags to riches success story. Isaacson really gets into, the making of a maverick, from his upbringing, which was a little unusual, to just his drive to solve problems that most people wouldn't even think about tackling.
So let's rewind all the way back to the beginning. Elon's childhood in South Africa, Isaacson really paints this picture of a very complex family dynamic, particularly the relationship between Elon and his father, Errol.
Yeah, not exactly warm and fuzzy. Isaacson doesn't really shy away from some of the harsher aspects of Errol's personality. I mean, he can be really tough on Elon, even verbally abusive at times. And, that obviously leaves a mark. But at the same time, you can kind of see how those experiences might have, in a weird way, contributed to Elon's resilience.
Yeah, it's like he developed this incredibly thick skin, like this ability to just withstand anything, criticism, setbacks, whatever. Almost like those early experiences were like a training ground for the relentlessness that he's known for today.
Exactly. And it wasn't just Errol's, harshness. The whole family had this kind of adventurous streak. Like their motto was literally, live dangerously with caution.
Wow.
I know. And Elon's grandfather, Joshua, was this larger-than-life figure, flew across continents, racing cars, rallies.
It's almost like Shakespearean, this kind of legacy of risk-taking and ambition, but also tragedy woven into the family story.
Yeah. And, tragically, Joshua actually died in a plane crash when Elon was really young. So that adds another whole layer to the story. That idea of, pushing boundaries, but also the potential consequences of that seems to be a theme that pops up again and again with Elon.
Yeah, it makes you wonder how much of his drive to colonize Mars to find a backup plan for humanity really stems from those early experiences. Like maybe he just internalized those lessons about how fragile life is and the need for a plan B.
It's a really interesting connection, and one that I think Isaacson hints at throughout the book. But you also can't forget about escape when you're talking about Elon's early life. Like, amidst all the family stuff, he finds refuge in video games, and particularly strategy games.
Which, knowing where his career goes, is incredibly fitting.
Right. He wasn't just, zoning out. He was honing his ability to think strategically, manage resources, and outmaneuver opponents. These are all skills that would serve him really well later on.
And that continues when he goes to Queen's University in Canada. But his experience in college wasn't just, going to class. He had a pretty unconventional approach to networking.
Oh, yeah. He and his brother Kimball would read the newspaper, every day. But not for the news. They were looking for the most interesting people they could find.
What?
Yeah. And then they'd try to contact them.
Wait, so they're cold calling CEOs and industry leaders? I mean, that's some pretty bold stuff, even for Elon.
Totally. I think it shows a different side of his risk-taking. It's not just about, money or technology. It's about this constant pursuit of knowledge and connection.
He always wants to go straight to the source, cut through all the BS and get right to the heart of things. And you can see that in everything he does, from, cold calling rocket scientists at SpaceX to going up against the entire auto industry with Tesla.
Exactly. He's not afraid to challenge the status quo.
And that brings us to Zip2, his first big entrepreneurial venture, the early days of the internet.
Right. An online business directory with mapping software. A pretty simple idea, but it was a stepping stone to much bigger things.
And it was at Zip2 that Elon learns a crucial lesson about leadership. He goes in thinking that his strength is as a tech visionary, the CTO, the guy building the product.
Which makes sense. He's a builder at heart.
Right. But then they bring in these experienced executives, and that's when things change.
And Elon realizes that if he wants to really control his vision, he needs to be the CEO. He can't just be the tech guy in the corner. He needs to be the one calling the shots.
He realizes he can't rely on anyone else to execute his vision the way he wants it done. He has to be in charge.
It's a turning point for sure. He learns the hard way that you can't just have the vision. You got to be the one to steer the ship.
Yeah, to make it a reality. And that kind of leads us right into SpaceX. This company just fueled by Elon's, lifelong fascination with space. But this wasn't about, just launching rockets into orbit. This was about colonizing Mars, full on making humanity a multiplanetary species. What was it about Mars that really captivated him so much?
Well, I think for Elon, it was this ultimate insurance policy for humanity. He really believes that if we want to survive long term, We need a backup plan, something to escape, all the potential threats on Earth,
Yeah.
whether it's asteroids or climate change or even just like our own self-destructive tendencies.
So this combination of like massive ambition, but also like a genuine concern for the future of humanity. It's like he took those early lessons about risk and resilience to like a whole other level, like a cosmic level.
Right. And what's interesting is how he actually approached it, this goal of getting to Mars.
Yeah.
He didn't just throw money at the problem like some people might expect. He obsessed over every detail. Like he wanted to make space travel more efficient, cheaper challenge, the way the whole aerospace industry did things.
It's like what he did with Tesla, but with rockets, challenging the entire status quo.
Exactly. And he was always looking for ways to cut costs and streamline production, even if it meant going against, conventional wisdom. Like, remember that story about him trying to buy a used rocket from Russia?
Oh, yeah. Wasn't that like a whole thing?
Yeah. I mean, imagine flying to Russia with a suitcase full of cash, hoping to buy a used ICBM. It sounds like something out of a movie.
Ew.
And it almost ended in disaster.
Really? What happened?
Let's just say there was a lot of vodka involved. And Elon came home empty-handed. But it was a turning point. That's when he realized that if he wanted something done right, he had to do it himself.
And that's exactly what he did. I mean, after a lot of setbacks, a lot of challenges, SpaceX finally launches a rocket. It's this huge moment proving that a private company can compete with giant government agencies in space.
It really changed the game. And you can see that same drive, that same ambition in what he was doing with Tesla, too.
Yeah, he had this vision for an electric car that was not just good for the environment, but actually desirable, like something that could compete with the best gas-powered cars out there.
He wanted to create a car that people would be excited to drive. Not just because it was electric, but because it was a fantastic car, period.
And he wasn't content with just assembling parts from other companies. He wanted to control the whole process, from the battery to the software.
That's his thing, vertical integration. It was risky, it was expensive, but he was convinced that by controlling the entire supply chain, he could guarantee the highest quality and push innovation faster than anyone else.
It's like he's playing chess on this massive scale, always thinking several moves ahead of everyone else. But all that intensity, all that pressure, it takes a toll. Wasn't Tesla really close to going under at one point?
Multiple times, actually. Elon poured everything he had into that company. Money, time, energy. There were stories about him sleeping on the factory floor just to be closer to the action, working tirelessly to keep the dream alive.
It's kind of inspiring in a way, that level of dedication, but also kind of crazy.
Yeah. You got to admire his tenacity, but you also kind of wonder about the cost, to him and to the people around him.
And then in the middle of all this, he decides to buy Twitter.
It seems so out of left field at the time, right? But looking back, it kind of makes sense. It fits with this pattern of challenging the status quo, disrupting industries.
He saw an opportunity to shake things up. Again.
He saw Twitter as this digital town square, this platform for free speech and open dialogue. And he was getting more and more frustrated with what he saw as censorship and the suppression of certain viewpoints.
So he decided to do something about it.
Yeah, and it's been a wild ride ever since. Mass layoffs, changes to content moderation policies. He's definitely stirred the pot and sparked a lot of debate about the future of online discourse.
Whether you agree with his methods or not, you got to admit he's shaken things up and forced us to have some uncomfortable conversations. But there's this one detail from the book that I found really interesting. It's about this strategy game Elon's obsessed with. He'd even play it during business meetings.
You mean Polytopia? Yeah, it's this mobile game, but it's surprisingly complex. You got to manage your resources, explore new territories, build your civilization. It's all about strategy and adaptation.
And it makes you wonder, does he see the real world as just one giant game of Polytopia?
It's an interesting thought, isn't it?
Yeah.
Is he trying to conquer the world one industry at a time? I don't know if it's that simple, but it does make you think about where we draw the line between ambition and recklessness.
It's that willingness to push the limits,
Yeah.
That makes him so interesting, but also kind of unpredictable. And nowhere is that more obvious than with Neuralink, brain-machine interfaces. That's some next-level stuff.
Like something straight out of science fiction, right?
Yeah.
Implanting chips in human brains to enhance our abilities and maybe even merge with AI.
It's both exciting and kind of terrifying at the same time.
Yeah.
So what's the motivation behind it? Is he just trying to push the boundaries of technology, or is there something deeper going on there?
I think it's probably a bit of both. Elon's always believed that technology can solve almost any problem, but he also sees the potential dangers of AI. Like, what happens if it becomes smarter than us? Neuralink is kind of his way of making sure that we don't get left behind in the AI revolution.
So it's that double-edged sword again. Like, he's excited by the possibilities, but also aware of the risks.
Exactly. And that kind of brings us to Optimus, Tesla's humanoid robot.
Which seems like a weird left turn at first, but it's all connected, isn't it?
Oh, totally. It fits into this bigger vision of a future where humans and machines are working side by side, like seamlessly integrated.
He's got all the pieces of the puzzle. It's just not clear yet how they all fit together.
And that's what makes it so fascinating to watch it all unfold, even if sometimes it feels like he's making it up as he goes along.
Like he's playing this high-stakes game where the rules are constantly changing.
And maybe that's the point. Maybe he doesn't want to play by the rules. Maybe he wants to create his own rules.
He's definitely not afraid to shake things up. So where does that leave us? I mean, we've covered a lot of ground here. From his crazy childhood to his even crazier ambitions.
I think what we can learn from Elon is that the future isn't something that just happens to us. We have a say in it. We can choose to shape it.
And sometimes that means taking risks, breaking the rules, challenging the status quo.
And sometimes it means dreaming big.
Right.
Really big. Even if those dreams seem impossible at first.
So yeah, Elon Musk. He's a complex figure, brilliant but flawed. Driven, but maybe a little reckless. But one thing's for sure, he's not going to be ignored.
And whether you admire him or fear him, you got to admit, he makes things interesting.
That's for sure. Well, that's all the time we have for this deep dive into the world of Elon Musk. Thanks for joining us. We'll catch you next time.